The formal term for what you do is called clairaudient. It's called clear listening. And the voice sounds just like your own voice in your own mind, but you ask a question and then you get an answer. So as a child, I thought I was just talking to myself. I'd ask a question, I'd get an answer. And once it occurred to me that not everybody did that, I completely shut up about it. I didn't turn the gift off. I just didn't tell anybody.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Katharine Giovanni, a three-time award-winning best-selling author, speaker, and one of the original founders of the independent concierge industry. Katharine has authored over 12 books, including her latest release, The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, Unlocking Your Power. Katharine's journey from battling stage 3 breast cancer to navigating a challenging childhood has given her profound insights about resilience and forgiveness. Join us as Katharine shares these invaluable lessons and explores the transformative power of forgiveness. Get ready for a conversation brimming with inspiration and empowerment. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Katharine. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to this conversation, our pre-conversation before my listeners of the show know that sometimes the best conversations happen before I hit record, and I should really start listening to them and record the whole darn thing. But I don't think my editor would like me too much. He'd have to go through and filter even more than he already has to. But anyway, I appreciate you coming on, Katharine. This is going to be an exciting conversation because learning about your concierge industry, learning about, your struggles with breast cancer, learning about just who you are is exciting to me because we all have that origin, that special talent, that knowledge that we've cultivated. All right. And a lot of us don't understand that. And we don't really put a stock in it. And that's why I created the Give a Heck podcast, was to shine a light on those that don't have enough people doing that to them. So I appreciate you coming on. One of the things I focus and start on, as I talk to you about a little bit, and people that are new to the show, you'll find out shortly, I focus on a person's origin stories, things that happen from their childhood to adulthood, good, bad, or indifferent, that triggered or made you make specific decisions. Sometimes people don't realize it till they're in their 20s and 30s. Oh my goodness, something that happened to me when I was 8 or 10 really triggered me. So I'd appreciate it, Katharine, if you could share with me your origin stories and what key things from your childhood to adulthood led you to where you're at currently.
Well, the thing I do, I'm a forgiveness coach now, and I teach people how to forgive. Everybody says you have to forgive. Nobody teaches you how. And what if you don't want to? So, how did that all start? Well, when I was in the eighth grade, I was living in New York at the time. I'm in North Carolina now, and I was getting bullied in school. My parents were both alcoholics, really quite pickled, and they were getting a horrible divorce. And because of all the stress and all of that, I tried to commit suicide. So I turned into one of those kids. You know who I'm talking about. They're draped in black. They have one friend. They kind of just float through life. But I was living in New York at the time, and everybody wears black in New York. So that was probably just me being a native New Yorker. But I was angry. I was sick and tired. I was just kind of floating. I was a good student. I always was able to pull it out because I'm a writer. So if the test had an essay on it, I always, I could always blow that out of the water. So I kind of just bobbled through life like a bobblehead until I hit my 20s. And then my mother fell down a flight of stairs, broke her hip, ended up in the hospital, and even my mother couldn't get a gin and tonic in the hospital. So she sobered up and she went to rehab. And we spent the next 3 years closer than sisters. And if somebody asks me, what is the flashpoint of your life? What is that one point in your life where everything changed? This was it. My mother died 3 years later of breast cancer, and that was the flashpoint. And it killed me. And I kind of spent a year in mourning, but I realized very quickly that if I didn't change, I was going to die like she did. So as of January, I've been sober for 34 years. And when you first get sober and you start drinking, you go into recovery programs and whatnot, and you're told to forgive. Hmm, okay. And you have to reach out to people and actually talk to these people. I was born shy. Now I am an extroverted introvert now, but back then, yeah, reaching out and talking to somebody left me cold. I was in my 20s, didn't like it, didn't want to do it. But I paid it lip service. So I would started to, forgive people, not really meaning it, but it just kind of got me out of my mold and my life started to get better. And it wasn't until probably 20 years later that I actually figured out the formula to forgive. In 2020, my two partners and I, the three of us, figured out exactly how to forgive. And that's why we're teaching people how to forgive. Because the way I got through breast cancer, the way I got through everything was through positivity, gratitude, and forgiveness. It's kind of how I did it. But the flashpoint was when my mom died.
Well, yeah, that would be a big flashpoint. Well, when you talked about the fact of eighth grade, divorce, suicide,
Hmm.
at a very young age, you were going through some very character building moments, right?
It was
So
awful. Oh, yeah, it was awful. It was dark.
you had to have been, though, because I know we're going to talk about this, or we can talk about it right now, resilience. Was there something or someone that helped you develop the path that you've followed for the last, let's say, 30 years of being resilient and always overcoming those difficult challenges and trials in your life?
There was a couple things that happened. One of them might stretch everybody's brain a little bit, but it is what it is.
Okay.
The reason I was so different is because I used to talk to myself when I was a kid, and I used to answer myself. And imagine my surprise when discovered that not everybody did that. And it didn't really dawn on me what voices I was hearing. And no, I'm not schizophrenic. No, I don't have multiple personality disorder. But back in the 1960s and 70s, if you showed even a smidgen of intuition, they slapped you, you're crazy as a bedbug sticker on your forehead, and they'd give you meds, and you'd have to go to a psychiatrist and figure out all these questions why. I wasn't crazy. I was clairaudient, which means I knew how to listen. Who was I hearing? It could have been the angels, could have been God, doesn't really matter, does it? And so when I was 16, my father decided that I was kind of a troubled teen. So he sent me to Outward Bound when I was 16. And it's this outdoor program where you go canoeing and you go in the woods and you climb mountains and you rappel off cliffs. Scared of heights, so that wasn't my favorite part. But the part that transformed me is they put you in the woods by yourself for 3 days with no food, no human contact. Check on you once a day, but they don't talk to you. And they had the campsites spread out. I was the only one that didn't get wet because I put my tent up correctly. Still proud of that 50 years later.
Awesome.
But I was allowed to bring a pen and paper and like a journal type of thing. And I've always been a good writer. So I used to write questions down and I used to hear the answers in my mind. And it's almost like I had conversations for 3 days and I realized I didn't like the person that I was. I didn't like who she was. I didn't like what she was saying. I didn't like the fact she was angry. I didn't like any of it. So I just decided to change. And I decided to be and I still have the journal from way back, but I decided and I wrote it down. I wanted to be a lighthouse. I wanted to show my family how to do it right. So I changed. And I went out after the solo, and all the counselors said, "What happened? No camper has ever changed as much as you." And I just couldn't tell them what I did because I once I figured out what I could do, I didn't tell anybody. And when I mean anybody, I mean nobody. So I just looked at them and said, I just decided to grow up. And it took me a good 20 years to become the person I wanted to be because I was a kid. I was 16, it just I had a little growing to do. Life had to smack me around a little bit. But I didn't tell anybody about that little bird on my shoulder, which of course I wrote about because I've written a lot of books, until I hit my 40s. I kept it quiet. I didn't even tell people in the concierge industry. I would kind of get information for people, and I would mask what I said by looking and say, Dwight, have you ever thought about doing dot dot dot? It'd be great for you. Here's what you should do dot dot dot. And when I got really close to somebody and somebody, how could you possibly know that? I'd say, yeah, experience. I didn't tell anybody. But if you can imagine a Fortune 500 company and everybody being allowed to be intuitive, because everybody on the planet is intuitive. You either see it, hear it, feel it, or know it. And everybody does it. Nobody not does it. Everybody's intuitive. Can you imagine if you allowed people to openly show their intuition, what that would do to a company? How our world might change? And taking these people like me who were hiding in the closet, trying to hide what they can do so they can, quote, fit in and be normal like everybody else. Normal is
Isn't
over.
Oh, it absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, I raised my
Very
kids to be
overrated.
abnormal, right? When you talk about intuition, does that tie into at all being an empath, being
Yeah.
somebody that can pick up on people?
It does. I don't
Because
use the word psychic, and you'll never hear me say the word psychic unless I'm explaining this concept, because the word psychic is, with all due respect to anybody who sells used cars, don't email me. It's just an example. But it's like a used car person or a grifter with a crystal ball. You're really scared they're just going to take you and take your money, that kind of thing. So the word psychic has a real bad reputation. I use intuitive. Now, there are people out there who walk into a room and it feels off, or they shake somebody's hand and it just feels wrong, and they know it feels wrong. Then there's other people that get themselves into a heap of trouble, will look you dead in the eye and said, I knew I shouldn't have done this. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done this. That's intuition. That's the little bird in your shoulder. That's what I used my entire life. And that's how I got through. That's how I became resilient because I trusted the little bird on my shoulder. That's why I'm still alive. It saved my life 4 times. Not that I'm counting. That's why I found the breast cancer just in the nick of time. I trusted that little bird on my shoulder.
so I love this conversation. So intuition, and then I brought up empath, and we
Mhm.
talked about being, it's about awareness. There's so many people that avoid, I guess some people might call that intuition, like talked about somebody being like a bird on your shoulder or whatever.
Sure.
That little voice. I studied a man and went to a few of his conferences named by the name of Blair Singer, and he created a system called the Little Voice Management System, and this was more than 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. And he talked about intuition, he talked about awareness, he talked about being somebody that's honest with yourself, right?
Right.
Literally communicating with yourself. There's nothing wrong with it. Like you talked about being very unique in which you are, where you talk to yourself. I've had that conversations with myself for many, many years, and I still to this day do it. I'll sit and I'll be thinking about something. Sometimes the conversation is still between my 6 inches, but a lot of times I'll be vocal about it so that my brain hears it differently, right? So I don't know if
That
that
means
makes
you're
sense.
that the formal term for what you do is called clairaudient. It's called
Okay.
clear listening. And the voice sounds just like your own voice in your own mind, but you ask a question and then you get an answer. So as a child, I thought I was just talking to myself. I'd ask a question, I'd get an answer. And once it occurred to me that not everybody did that, I completely shut up about it. I didn't turn the gift off. I just didn't tell anybody.
That
Nobody.
makes sense. Yeah. Well,
Because I didn't
because
want to be put into an institution because that's what
or
they did.
judgmental,
They
right?
would
We have a
judge you. It was the 70s. They would have put me away or judged me or sent me someplace. I didn't want to be sent away.
well, look at young children today. Like I look at my grandkids, and the younger ones will be playing with like superheroes, like action figures or cars, and
Sure.
they're talking to that
Aquaman.
action. Yeah, they're talking to that figure, and they're being both sides of the conversation, right? And
Yeah,
you look at that natural gift of them being able to be expressive, and then society gets a hold of them in school, which I have an issue with because
I do too.
the school systems are very broken. They don't I'm not picking on teachers, they're just doing what they're told. The programs need to be developed to foster, right, that growth or that natural wonder, not
But
to
they don't.
squelch it, but
They don't.
to teach them gratefulness, gratitude, to teach them that
Forgiveness.
how to, yes, forgiveness, or teach them how to use inappropriate, how they inappropriately use the word sorry, right? And
Yep.
that drives me absolutely crazy. I had conversations with my kids still today. I have it. That's another thing. Again, we're going to segue off a few different times, and I'm sorry, we can always go back. But when I think of the word forgiveness, and I think of how you people utilize forgiveness, and myself included, and the word sorry, how do they tie together? Do you see a commonality? Like I know there's a difference between sorry and forgiveness, but how has society confused the two, and maybe define them in your
I
words?
think they have confused the two. I'm sorry, I forgive you. I'm sorry is more for it is more for them. I forgive you is more for me. I know that sounds weird. When I forgive, forgiveness to me means I want you out of my head. That's bottom line. I want to stop thinking about you. I want to stop obsessing about you. I want you out of my head. Now, if I forgive you, it doesn't necessarily mean I want a relationship with you. I probably don't. And if I forgive you, I'm not giving a pass. It doesn't mean that you were right. You're still unforgivable. You're still wrong. So in my system that I have in the book on a 10 scale, with 10 being unforgivable dumpster fire, and one being the easiest person in the world to forgive, everybody watching and listening to this broadcast right now, everybody's thinking of their number 10. And that's why what stops people from forgiving, because you're thinking of that unforgivable dumpster fire, the person that really hurts you the most. Well, in my world, I want you to start with the number ones. I want you to start with the easy ones. Work your way up to the dumpster fire. Why? And you don't even have to forgive that number 10 person. I'm only the only one on the planet that will ever tell you that. Why? Because there's so many other people, places, and things. I did say places and things that you can forgive before you even get to that dumpster fire. There's so many other people and things. Einstein proved without a shadow of a doubt that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It simply transforms into something else. So when you get mad, what do you think happens? It leaves your mouth and it dissipates into the universe. It does not. It hangs in your energy field and it will stay there until you clear it. So forgiveness is allowing you to clear your energy field so you can pay attention. Let me give you an example that I like to use. If you're listening to this podcast, hop over to YouTube and watch the demonstration. I'm about to hold a coffee cup right in front of my face. This coffee cup represents anger and bitterness. Now, look at my body language. When I first get angry, I can manage my anger. I can hold it off to the side. You and I can still have a conversation. I still have, arms available. Easy to hold it off to the side. But the longer I hold on to this anger and bitterness, the more it's going to start to hurt. So now I have to use two hands to hold it up. And it's starting to get into my brain and it's starting to get into the front of my brain and in my conversations with people. And if I still hold on to it, now it's in front of me. I can't see Dwight at all. It's all I can think about. It's all I can talk about. And even if I spin the stories funny, it's all I'm talking about. So now my friends have gone down. So how do I get the glass to, how do I get rid of the anger? It's through forgiveness. Forgiveness is selfish. You do it for you. You do not do it for them.
Wow.
It's all about you.
That's so powerful. You know, I'm going to add into this as another segue. I believe that every guest I've had on coming up on 4 years has been destined to be my guest and me destined to be their friend and have a conversation
Mhm.
with them because a lot of what you're talking about, I used to always tell my kids when you forgive somebody, you're forgiving so that you can let go of it.
That's
And
right.
and we can segue into this too. And I used to always tell them, you don't necessarily have to go and say such and such, I forgive you. Because at the end of the day, they most likely aren't even thinking about you. You're putting more
You,
energy and effort into it than they are, and you just haven't let go of it. They have a type of personality, not necessarily that they let go of it, they just don't care. They're just toxic. So you can be somebody that can say, you know what, I forgive this person and
that's
I
right.
forgive myself for allowing that negative energy to cloud my judgment, to be that cup in front of my face, right? And I still talk about that today. I still practice everything that I talk about or that you've mentioned, and I will till the day I take my last breath. But at the end of the day, it's okay. So, one of the things you talk about too, or I put in my, I haven't even looked at my notes, but I know I did because I put all this prep into it, is you don't really believe that you have to forgive somebody, or do you believe that you have to forgive them face to face? Like what is up with that? Myself, I don't think you need to, but hey, I'm open to learning different
Okay.
things.
A couple things. You talked about energy. I did not pay him to say that, but it's a perfect segue. Everybody, the special sauce to the whole system is the reason people don't stay forgiven is because you didn't forgive the energy. Everything, including this microphone, has energy around it. Everything on our planet. So forgiving the energy is going to allow the whole thing to shift. Now, that being said, in my world, you don't have to talk to these people. You don't have to. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. You're forgiving for you. So where they are or are not doesn't matter. So you can forgive dead people because it doesn't matter where they are. These people, even if they're not alive anymore, they're still alive in your head. And that's where you want to get them out. So you don't have to talk to these people. You can do it all in the privacy of your own home. And my process is I forgive the person, the energy around the person, forgive myself, the energy around myself, and the whole energy around the whole thing. So let me give you a couple examples. Let's say you're driving down the road. You stop at a red light and you look to your left and you see the school you used to go to, and maybe you were bullied in that school. And you don't look at it every day, but today you did. So by the time you get to work, you're grumpy. And it's nobody's at work fault that you're grumpy, but your brain went back into the past. So what do? If you can't forgive the bully themselves, and it may not be even appropriate for you to do so, pull out other things in the dumpster. That's why I call it a dumpster fire. Pick out pieces of the memory. Forgive the school, the energy around the school. Forgive the table, the chair, the bench. Forgive the playground. Forgive the people who stood around and didn't do anything and the energy around all these people. Personally, I forgave 1974, the whole year. Just forgave 1974 and the energy around 1974. Why? Because that year was a dumpster fire for me. It was the eighth grade when I tried to commit suicide. And I did pick out the other things in that memory, but then I forgave the whole thing itself. You can forgive anything. You can forgive politicians. You can forgive cities, towns, buildings. If it's holding a memory, a bad memory in your head, you can forgive it and get it out of your head. So I get asked all the time, say, well, I don't want to go back to my childhood. It was horrific. I understand that. And I'm only asking you to go back a few more times so you can clear it forever. I did have a dysfunctional youth, and I can now look back at my youth and I can pick out the pockets of love. I can pick out the pockets of laughter. And I could probably remember the horrible things if you asked me to, but it's all gotten fuzzy now. I actually don't remember it as much. I remember the love that was there. And that's, you can literally change your past by forgiving this. But this is an onion. It's like peeling back the layers of the onion. You can't get a number 10 person down to a one overnight. Not going to happen. Because what you're going to do is you're going to use my mantra, and you don't need to hold crystals unless you want to. You don't need to burn incense unless you want to. You can dance around the room if you want to. Doesn't matter to me. But it's a simple, simple mantra. And you can't get a 10 down to a 1. You might get it to a 9, but then your brain is a wonderful tool and it protects you. So as you forgive the first layer, you're going to remember things that you probably don't that have you that you're going to remember things that you've probably forgotten. So you're going to have to make another pass at it. And then maybe another pass. A lot of people call this shadow work because you're working on the shadows from your past. And it's going to take a minute. But if you start with the easy ones, your life is going to change because you're going to start to pay attention. You won't be paying as much attention to the anger. You're going to see job opportunities. You'll be able to see ways to make more money, maybe a dream relationship. Why? Because you were so focused on all your anger before. Now you can pay attention to the good stuff.
Yeah, that I listening to you explain that, and I think about the past, and I think about the toxic things that happen in my own childhood, or even clients that I work with. We compartmentalize, and people say, "Oh, just bury it, bury it." No, don't
Right.
bury it, because it
Oh, don't
affects
do that.
it affects who you are as a young adult, a middle-aged, older adult. It affects you right up to when you pass. And forgiveness for me, like forgiving the bullies in my life, or highlighting, that, like you said, the love that happens in those
Right.
specific points and journeys of our lives, people think it's difficult to highlight that. No, it's not. It's more difficult for you to continue to compartmentalize and struggle to hold it in. And that trigger point, like you said, going by a school where it triggers you, or going by a job that fired you, for an example, or
It could be
whatever.
the building where you got
Maybe,
fired. Sure.
or maybe you drove by an ex's house, and
Sure.
because you
Entirely
have to be,
possible.
it's a journey for you to get to where you need to go. And like you said, I love how you put that. Then all of a sudden you get to work and you're grumpy or whatever, and the self-awareness part needs to come in, because most people don't aren't self-aware that that was a trigger, because they've sat all these years and just, oh, let's push it down, let's push it down. And instead of accepting their inner self, their feelings and their emotions about it, and just,
Right.
for me, I give it up to God, right? You know what? God, what is your will? I'm giving this up because this is my awareness of what this person did, and it's still hurting me. So I forgive them. I forgive
You.
myself for letting it
Yeah.
get
You
to
forgive
that
for you.
point,
Right.
and I'm moving on. And sometimes I have to do it more than once. Is that typical, or is, like you said, you
It
talked
is.
about the onions to go from 10, 9, and it's maybe never get to 1. So that's where I personally think that I'm a working project. Right. So there's sometimes that I thought I accepted things, and like you said earlier, they're like a haze, or they're not clear anymore. But sometimes things will happen in my life, or things will creep back in that I thought that I dealt with, and then I have to
They do.
go back over it again. So that is typical.
If it's family or a business partner, a lot of people's numbers, eight, nines, and tens, if you will, a lot of the time it's family. Families will mess you up. And I don't think half the time they mean to, but it does. Everybody I meet has something in their past with their family that's just messed them up. And you've been carrying that. And I've talked to a few people who said, listen, it fuels my fire. My bitterness and my hate and what happened to me is the reason I am who I am today. That's how I could make all this money. It's my life. It's my banner. I mean, I survived this and now I'm sharing my story, that kind of thing. Okay, it did get you very far. 100% it got you very far. Your hate and anger probably fueled your car for a very long time. But that's the local train. Wouldn't you rather take the express? Love and forgiveness will get you farther 3 times faster and 3 times higher than hate ever will. Because if you use your hate to fuel your fire, you're going to get every Tom, Dick, and Harry flu bug that's out there. Now, I can prove it through science. There was a study done by a Japanese researcher called Matsumoto. It's called the Japanese Water Study. And I'm going to simplify this completely. I just did a video about it the other day, actually. Took two containers of water. One container of water he spoke nothing but love to. Beautiful, wonderful words. The other container of water spoke hate, negativity, horrible, awful words. Then he put it under a microscope. The water he spoke nasty things to had these black and brown malformations. They were nasty looking. And the water he spoke love to had these beautiful, crystalline, gorgeous formations. So why am I telling you this? The human body is almost 98% water. So when you have bad self-talk or you're angry and bitter and you refuse to forgive, what do you think you're doing to the water cells in your body? That's the how behind anger is toxic. That's why anger and stress will literally kill you because you're literally changing the molecules in your body.
Yeah, you become a magnet for everybody and anything. And even if
Do.
you talk about, hatred feeding that fire and stuff, everything that we say toxic, even not to ourselves, but to other people, it ends up coming
Right.
back to you. And you
It's
surround
like an
yourselves.
Australian boomerang.
Yeah, you surround yourself with people that are conducive to wanting to be angry. They're feeding your anger, and you never have a sense of gratefulness or gratitude for life.
No.
And I see that myself with people that are sick all the time. And another thing that happens when you're angry all the time and feeding that anger, that can't survive forever. So then you're going to all of a sudden, you're going to have people that grow out of you. Maybe they find their light and they're
Yeah.
gone. You're going to start losing people. You're going to only attract the negative
True.
people, but it's not enough to keep you. It's not perpetual motion of a good life. You're going to be sick all the time. Turn to addictions. I see that a lot with a lot of angry people.
Sure.
They're alcoholics, drug addicts,
That's
sex
right.
addicts, sadness addicts, anger
You're trying to make
addicts. They
yourself
can be all
feel
of them.
better.
Yeah, they're
And
just
losing
trying.
the anger, it's hard because it's become your story. And without your story, who are you? Kind of scary, isn't it? If I don't have my story, then who am I? Well, may I submit to you that you will be the person you were always meant to be until you were so paying attention to the anger. Once you put the anger down, now the real person can come out, the person you were always meant to be, whether it be a teacher or whoever it is. Now they can come out. Now you can pay attention to life around you. Anger is completely toxic, but once you start to lose the anger, your life will change. Now, you will lose friends probably because you've attracted. Jim Rohn said, "I'm the sum of the five people I spend the most time with." So if you all of a sudden start to get happier and exhibit more joy, the people who love the negativity and who love the narcissists and all the people, they're going to probably not want to be around you anymore because you're not like them anymore. But the good news is you'll attract different people into your life.
Oh yeah, they fall
And
away
you may
like
have to do it
flies.
more than once, because
Oh,
you will, especially if you live with them.
absolutely. I get people talking to me all the time that we have conversations and I coach them, clients even on the finance side, because their financial lives are in disarray. A lot of times it's because of
Sure.
their 6 inches between their ears. Their brain doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie, and they believe those stories they tell themselves about woohoo woohoo about anger or whatever. And I'll tell them, first and foremost, let's look at the people around you. Like you talked about the five closest people, whether it can
Hmm.
be family, friends, and I'll tell them that here's a percentage system and that I've been using now for 7, 8 years with my clients and myself. Actually, be cognizant of your energy. Do you have triggers? Well, I don't think I do. Okay, well, so we're going to start working on seeing if you have triggers and we'll have conversations. How do you feel when I say this? And I'll say, so now when you're around these people and your family or your friends, are you the type of person that can't wait to see them again? Or you're thinking to yourself, you're looking at your watch constantly and you're going, oh gosh, I can't wait for this to be over. And I hope I don't have
That's
to
right.
see them in it for 6, 8 months or never. Or are you the type of person that goes, well, 70% of the time, I can't wait to see this person again. I call it the 70-30 principle. And 30% of the time they say something doesn't really resonate with me. And when I say something, it isn't always verbal. It can be written, it can be in a text, it can be what they post, it can be something you overheard them say to somebody else. But if
Right.
you ever get to a point where somebody's 50-50, or 50% of the time you're not sure if we're walking into a landmine or if you're walking into joy and happiness, I would say that person shouldn't be in your life. And people will say, well, that's
Probably not.
impossible. That's my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my dad. Okay. So you have a connection to family unity. We're going to have a couple events a year. Here's what you do. Supper's at 5. You go at 4:45 or 4:40. You have your niceties and your little, because you don't want to poke the bear. Eat your meal, right? Have your dessert, have a few more niceties, and leave 35 to 45 minutes later. Well, how can I do that? Easy. You say, you know what? I have other plans. And they'll say, well, what happens if
Right.
I don't? You always have other plans. What do you mean you always have other plans? I have a plan to protect my 6 inches between my ears. So I'm not lying. I always have a plan. I have plans. I have to go. And what my plan is to protect me. I know I have to be around you because you're my parent or my uncle, aunt, sister, brother, cousin. But all the other people that aren't within that family circle that you get together with a couple times a year, they go this way in the fork in the road. I go this way, and I never communicate with them again. I literally sever ties with
Right.
them. They say, "And how successful you've been?" I said, "I've done it many times over the last 30 years. I started my personal development journey in 1993, and I've continually grow. I'm continually on the climb to not stay camped, and I literally practice that with everybody that I comes into my sphere. You talked about handshake, whether you feel that negative energy or whatever. If I do
Mhm.
feel something negative because I've been told I'm an empath, I literally will then ask questions, not intrusive questions, but just questions to see how they respond. And then I watch their body language because I love being a
That's right.
student of nature, right? So everything we're talking about, Catherine and myself, is a work in project. You'll hone, you'll develop, you'll get better. You might slide back a rung on the ladder, but that's okay because now you've developed processes that'll help you go three rungs back up, and you only slid one, right? Life isn't perfect. At least for me, it isn't, right? I have to continually work on being the best version of me and forgiving people, acknowledging that they're hurting me, and forgiving myself
Yeah.
for allowing that. And using that 70-30 principle, I've got rid of my circle of friends is down now to maybe 5. Before I used to think,
This is
oh, I
good.
got to have 50, 60, 100. I got to be the, walk in the room and I'm the center of attention. I don't
Oh,
care for
Lord,
that.
no.
Right. Well,
Let
that
me
was in my
add to your
20s. I was in my 20s,
let,
right? Now I'm in my late 50s. So
let me add to the holiday thing. Let's say I do not have an Aunt Martha, which is why I named this fictitious person Martha, because I don't have an
okay.
aunt named that. Let's say you're going to Christmas, and every Christmas you sit next to Aunt Martha. You've asked your parents to stop doing that, but every Christmas, some reason, there she is sitting next to you. Aunt Martha drinks a lot. And the more she drinks, the more hate and negativity comes out of her mouth. And after all these years, she knows how to press your buttons and she delights in making you mad. You hate it. It's awful. So what do? Okay, a couple weeks before Christmas or even a month before, I want you to go through my forgiveness process. I want you to forgive Aunt Martha. And I want you to forgive the energy around Aunt Martha, forgive yourself and the energy around you, and then forgive the energy around the entire Christmas table and everybody there. And then I want you to keep doing that. And after you forgive Aunt Martha, check in with your body. Is she still a 10 or did you move it down to a 9? Are you still kind of feeling bad about it? Do it again in 24 hours. How do you know when you've forgiven Aunt Martha? When you can look at her name and there's zero, and I mean zero emotional charge. You're not going to forget. I don't know anybody on the planet who can forget something that happened. Maybe some happy little unicorn is forgotten somewhere in a pretty little field. But most of us can't forget. But what I can promise you is a zero emotional charge. So what's going to happen when you go back home for Christmas? She's not going to bother you as much. You're probably still going to be sitting next to her. And I would absolutely limit how much time I spend in that house because I would. I arrive, late, leave early, whatever you have to do. But when you're sitting next to her, it's not going to bother you. You know what she's going to say. You know that when she tries to push your buttons, you'll probably just shake your head. It's going to take the emotions out of it and you're going to feel better. And she'll probably notice, which will probably make her a little angry because she's not getting the reaction that she wants. See, you can forgive anything. I forgave cancer. I forgave the energy around cancer. I forgave all of it. it's a matter of your mindset. You can't control what you get, but you can control how you get through it, and you can control how you get through that dinner with Aunt Martha.
Oh, absolutely. And I just, it just, we just had Thanksgiving here. It's the same sort of idea. I love seeing
Yeah.
the people, right? But there's a couple of people I really don't enjoy seeing. And
Well,
they weren't there. So it was kind of
kind of
blissful.
nice.
Yeah, it was blissful. It was like, oh, I get this warm, fuzzy feeling, and yeah, it was just, it was, and I stayed longer than I normally would stay because that
They weren't
toxicity or
there.
that, yes, and it made things that much more pleasant. And yeah, because I know some of my family listen to my podcast. I won't be specific, but you
You
know,
don't like
like,
walking on it. You don't like walking on eggshells around people? Come on now, Dwight.
no, have you ever read
Eggshell
that book?
walking is fun, said nobody ever.
No. And there's a book by that title that I've read, Walking on Eggshells. But anyway,
Excellent.
there's so many different things that we can do to change our lives. And we just realize that we have a choice in life. There's no maybes. I tell people that all the time. There's no maybe I'll do this. You either do or you don't. You either can or you can't. Quit telling your mind or telling other people out loud, oh, can you do this? Oh, maybe I'll let you know. You've already told your mind already has given you an answer. You're just
Oh
not
yeah,
bold
they've already
enough.
shut it off. Yeah.
You're just not bold enough to say, no, that's not going to work for me. And it's called boundaries. And that's something I
Sure.
still work on, especially when I have 5 kids, right? Having boundaries and I teach people this. Maybe I'd like to have your take on this too. Texts, phone calls, emails. You do not have to respond to them right away. You do not have to, somebody calls you and it takes a split second for me to know if I'm in the right headspace to take that phone call. It can even be a client. And if it's a client listening, I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm working on something. I'm in a different headspace. I'm not in the right headspace to take that phone call from the client,
Yeah.
my kids, my parents. I let it go to voicemail. I know my parents in their 80s are like, you have to answer everything. You got to respond to that text. And oh, I'm so sorry I missed your text from 2 hours ago. And it's like, that's fine. I don't care. Like, life's too short for you to worry about your response to somebody and allowing it to trigger you and excite you. And that's another thing I'll tell people too. And we talked about this a little bit earlier about talking out loud. I'll say to people, if you're angry and you're texting somebody and don't send it, when you're done writing it, because sometimes that can be cathartic, or you're doing an email and or whatever the case may be, maybe it's a voice memo, maybe it's something you've read, it's triggered you, and you're gonna be a keyboard warrior. Read it out loud and read it out loud
Yeah.
more than once. How does your body trigger when you read it out loud? And then people will go, well, I've never tried that. I will. And then people will get back to me and tell me, well, I've done that. And wow, I didn't
Yeah.
send that text. I didn't send that email. I didn't do that keyboard warrior post, or I reworded it and I talked it out loud until it wasn't offensive, until it got my point across, but it wasn't based on anger and hostility. It was based on trying to understand, trying to articulate a thought process. And if you're worried about negativity back at you, then you shouldn't send it at all.
I
Just
tell people
walk
to
away.
wait 24 hours and then read it again. And I've also told people to burn it. Please don't burn your house down. But
Yeah, please
go
don't. We're
outside.
not, we're not,
We're not,
yeah, we're not condoning fire in your house,
no, we are
right?
not. But you could write it and get it out. Now, one of the things you can do is because my method is all by yourself, there's two things you can do. You could do it with a buddy. And this has to be a very close buddy that you could be emotional with and show all the skeletons in your closet to. So it's got to be somebody you trust. But you could also talk to the chair. If you have somebody, let's say they've passed away, so you can't tell them what you really wanted to tell them. Sometimes a visual helps. So you put a chair in front of your chair, maybe a picture of the person, and now get it out. Say anything you want. Yell at them, scream at them, do whatever you want, throw something at them, doesn't matter. And then once you've gotten that out of your system, then do my mantra. And it's probably because you're talking to a chair, you'll probably label them a 8, 9, or 10. You're probably going to have to do it a few more times to get to back that down. But yeah, you can talk as much as you want. Now, if you're the type of person that does want to reach out and talk to people, do it. If that's what you need to get closure. I never felt the need to do that. I have forgiven everybody, including my number 10s, um, alone in a room because I just don't feel the need to tell anybody that I've forgiven them. And they probably don't care. They're living their life. They don't care. They don't know
Exactly.
you're mad at you.
They're not even thinking
Not even
about
thinking
you.
about you. No,
Even
not even
even
a little
at
bit.
even at Martha that poked you to get you upset. Once she leaves, she don't give a
Yeah.
shit about you.
She doesn't care. She got her laugh. She got her joy in making you
Yeah.
miserable, and now she's moving on to the next victim. My mother used to say every family's the same, only the names have changed. So we all have an Aunt Martha. We all have, the couple of aunts and uncles and these relatives that they walk in and you're like, ugh.
Well, and people don't they're shocked by this. You might be,
Everybody has it.
well, I have my dad's one of 18 kids. My mom's one of 9 kids.
18.
Yes, I have over 60 first
Damn.
cousins
Excuse
on
me
my
language, but
dad's. Yeah,
wow.
I have over 60 first cousins on my dad's side of the family. I maybe know what five of them are doing in life.
Wow.
The rest are like, bye-bye. I don't want you around in my life. I don't care to see you. I don't care to communicate with you. And then I'll run into one of the relatives that I get along with, and they'll say, such and such has said this about you and that about you, especially when I brought my book out, all the negativity from my relatives. And I'd go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
We don't seem upset. Why would I care? They're not in my
Yeah.
life. They don't add any value to my 6 inches. They don't make me feel good about myself when I was younger, got older, seen them at family reunions, and now I don't care. Well, they're your relative, right? And then that blood is thicker
Doesn't
than
matter.
water.
Walking
That
away is
bye-bye.
healthy. My family is the people I choose to call family. Well, blood is thicker in water. Not always. You
Exactly.
can't
I have
choose your family,
close.
but you can. I have close friends who are closer to me than sisters, are closer than family. And your the relatives you were born with, you can choose to get to know or choose not to. Walking away is healthy. If you've got a narcissist, for example, in your family, boundaries are healthy. Walking away is healthy. They're going to gaslight you. And so walking
Absolutely.
away is healthy. I have walked away from a lot of people over the years for my own mental health.
Well,
And my husband will say, what they think about me is none of my business.
absolutely. Right? And I
None of
have
my
people in
business.
my life, I have people in my life that, brothers from another mother, sisters from
Yep,
another mother, people that
exactly.
aren't blood related that I'm closer to and I trust with. And you mentioned earlier in our conversation about having that person where you can just tell them everything.
Right.
I've told some people that aren't blood related things about my life that my family, my children, my mom and
Me as
dad
well.
don't know. And at the end of the day, I feel zero guilt of protecting me because in order for me to be the best servant of others, I need to
Yeah.
protect me. And every time in my life where I slide and I fall backwards and I have to pick myself up from that circumstance is always a forgiveness moment for me. Forgive myself for allowing that person to trigger me when in the past they haven't triggered me in 10 years or whatever, right? Reason I was telling that is that you're human. So, don't expect perfection from yourself either. That to me, that's
No,
impossible, right? You just need to love, live life, avoid, go late, leave early, like you said, or whatever, like I said, I just come at a specific time, I leave at a specific time. And when people, hey, what are you up to? Can you get together? People in my past that I haven't heard from them in years. And, oh, I'm extremely busy in my life right now. And I might not be busy. I might have time to see them, but what I'm extremely busy is protecting myself because I know that
that's right.
person's toxic and it just doesn't pay to stoke the fire, throw
Forgive
gas on
yourself.
it, poke the bear. I don't need to put myself in that circumstance. So I absolutely love this conversation. So repeat, what is your mantra again? Have you,
The the mantra is I completely forgive you and I completely forgive the energy around you, insert the person's name. Now let's use Martha. I completely forgive Aunt Martha. I completely forgive the energy around Aunt Martha. I completely forgive myself for anything I may or may not have done. I forgive the energy around myself. I forgive the energy around both of us. And so it is. That's it. It's a very simple thing. Put your hand in your heart when you say it, because the words are really just for the humans in the room. It's the energy that makes the difference. It's the energy that you're putting out and the energy you're forgiving that actually makes the difference. And forgiveness energy is serious. Let me tell you a story. I forgave a childhood friend of mine, and I have no memory of why we stopped speaking. No memory. It was back in the 1970s. So who remembers? So I decided, easy number one person to forgive. Hadn't spoken to this person since in maybe 30, 40 years. So I sat and I said that mantra. I imagined my childhood friend as she was, as I remembered her, was standing in front of my bed, and I forgave her. And I really meant it. And my shoulders felt immediately lighter. It's really weird, but it does happen. I felt a kind of an energy come out of my solar plexus, which is in the middle of your stomach, right below your rib cage, right above your belly button. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had forgiven her. 2 hours later, she calls me up on the phone.
Wow.
I'm a concierge by training, so my concierge training kicked in, and we said all the right words and made all the right noises, and we forgave each other and we reminisced. And after a while, I'm a curious little bear. And I said, I have to know. After all these years, why did you choose today of all days to call me? She said, it was the darndest thing. We're 700 miles apart at this point. It was the darndest thing. A figurine you gave me way back in school 2 hours ago, which was when I was saying the mantra, fell off my shelf and landed in the middle of the floor. And I saw it and figured I should probably call you after all these years. So
Wow.
if forgiveness energy has the power to move a figurine 700 miles away or change the water molecules in your body for a number one level person, can you imagine what it will do to your life for higher level people? Can you imagine what it would do if you forgave 10, 15 people? Imagine what that would do to your health and your life. This is
Wow.
serious science we're talking about. Now, one little PSA. I am an overachiever, well documented overachiever. And so when I came up with this system, my friends and I got my list together, and it must have had 50 people on it. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to be like a phoenix rising from the ashes. I'm going to be like a butterfly coming out of the cocoon. I'm going to forgive all these people. I'll do it before bed. So then when I wake up tomorrow, I'll be a new person. Yeah, right. Didn't work out that way because I did forgive all those people. I did do it before bed because your body heals itself in its sleep. So I want everybody to do it before bed, but I forgave too many people. And I spent the next 3 days in bed with what everybody thought was the stomach flu. It was not the stomach flu. Remember that Japanese water study? My cells just had to catch up. And my body was trying to clear the anger and negativity out in the only way it knew how. So when you do this process, I really want you to only do 10 people at a time. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't make yourself sick. Do it before bed. And it's a nightly practice that I practice every night. And I also think of the things I'm most grateful for. And then I do 10 forgiveness people or things or places, whatever I decide I want to forgive that night. And I usually have a list in front of me. And if some people, most people are just super tired after the practice, even 10 people, they just unexplainably get very tired. Other people, you might be in the bathroom a little bit. Didn't eat a piece of bad fish. It's just your body clearing out some cells. I'm trying to be as polite as I can. But this is a serious practice that will absolutely change your life. And the thing about it, it works whether you believe in it or not. It's like the law of gravity. The law of gravity, we can call the law of gravity the law of keeping Dwight on the planet. It doesn't care. It's still going to work. Okay, I don't believe in the law of gravity. It's still not going to care. It's still going to work. This works. And if you don't think it worked after you've done my worksheets and that kind of thing, if you don't think that it worked on a person, yeah, it did. You just forgave the first layer. You're just gonna just wait of 24 hours and more memories will come up and more things will enter your mind. Just be patient. It did work. Just keep going.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. It's definitely something I'm gonna have to purchase. Is it on Audible as well, or is it just
It is. It is. I understand not everybody likes to read, so it's I have the audiobook available. My younger son and I did the audiobook and we're still talking to each other. Banner, banner. We have the audiobook, the paperback, and the ebook all available.
sweet? I'm gonna go on to my Audible and buy it. I
Yeah, we're
can't
still
wait.
talking to each other. He's done two of them for me. It's the only way I can get my kids to read my books is to make them produce it.
Sweet. That's awesome. So one of the things, as we're getting toward the end of the show, we could have like a 5, 6 hour show, but I want to give the audience enough about you, but not enough where they think they know it all either. Right. I know,
There
like
you
you
go.
said, you like giving it away and you'll give it all up because you had somebody else tell you, why do you give it all away? Well, at the end of the day, we've given them more than enough to think about. And you've given them your
Enough to get
mantra, you've
started.
talked exactly, but not enough to complete. They have to still put in the effort. They still have to
You
want
do?
to, like I always tell people, any process I teach them, whether it's life coaching or it's on the financial planning side, you have to be one of the willing. If you're not one of the
Yep.
willing, you're never going to achieve anything. You're going to stay stuck. Your brain is a giant computer, needs to be fed information. You're going to be sick all the time because all you're feeding it is drama from
That's
television,
right.
from your friends, family, newspaper, social media, right? You get what you sow, right? Quit sowing the
Well, it's like
negativity of seeds and start sowing some positive stuff and watering it and doing things like you're
that's
mentioning,
right.
right?
A lot of people say, well, I can't, Catherine, because I've hit a wall. Okay. No disrespect to life coaches and speakers out there, not trying to bash you. Really, I'm not. But everybody talks about this darn wall. And here's some tools to get through the wall. And here's a jackhammer. And God will get you through that wall.
That's negative
Okay.
though.
Okay. Let's talk about the wall. Take a few bricks. Take some bricks out of the wall. Forgive a couple of people is my point. Then walk around the dumb thing. Keep going. Circle back if you can. You know, not everybody, and if you don't want to circle back, okay, that's fine. Here's what you do. If it's a number 10 person and it's unforgivable, and it really is unforgivable, there are some things in this universe that are legitimately unforgivable. 100%. So forgive yourself, forgive the energy around yourself, pick out some other pieces of the memory, the bed, the table, the chair, the park, whatever it is, and keep going. Forgive what you can and keep going. If you can't circle back, that's fine. Just keep going. And maybe a month from now, you'll be able to forgive other parts of the memory. If you never forgive the individual, I'm fine with that. And you should be too. Some things are unforgivable. Remember, you do it for you. You're not giving them a pass. You're not saying they were right. They were awful. It was horrible. It was the worst thing ever. You're the victim now. You want to be free. You want them out of your head. You want to live your life again. You want your life back. Forgive what you can and keep going. That's my
No.
message to everybody. Forgive what you
Well,
can and just keep going.
and that's true because at the end of the day, we communicate and we deal with people in a daily fashion that
Yeah.
are always the victim. They're always playing the role of the victim. They wear it like a proud shield, like a
I,
badge of honor.
I did it for years. Yes.
Yeah, me too. And those people, like for example, my ex, always a victim, still at her age today. And you feel for them, but you distance yourself from people like that, whether it's family,
Sure.
friends, whoever it is. Because if those listening, if your whole life you right now are thinking to yourself, well, this isn't me, and you're having that victim mentality, you need to have this book. You need to learn these processes. You need to reach out to Katharine because at the end of the day, life is in session. This isn't a dress rehearsal. You don't know if you have tomorrow.
That's
Live for the
right.
present. Even listening to, go get the Audible. Like I read so much with my own business. That's why I prefer Audible. I prefer listening to books just because I can fit it in. I can be, and this
Be
isn't
in your
to
car and listen to it, right?
this isn't a PSA, a personal service announcement to anybody, but I have a shower speaker. I put on books, right?
There
I'm
you
in the
go.
bathroom getting ready. I shower, I do whatever, I shave, and I'm listening to books. Well, I can't concentrate. Well, then listen to it again. right? You're going to get something from it, especially if it's an author
Gold
or
nugget.
somebody's. Yeah, absolutely. I remember listening to Napoleon Hill's. Um, Geez, now I'm trying to think of the name of the book. One of my favorite
Napoleon
books,
Hill. I know the book you're talking
the
about. I
devil,
have it
the book.
behind me.
I'm not
I have it
talking
behind
about.
me. Mhm.
Yeah, Outwitting the Devil is one of my
Oh,
favorites of
that's a
his.
different Napoleon Hill.
Oh, you want to? That is
I haven't
amazing
heard of
because
that one.
Sharon Lecter got it released in 2011, dealt with the family. It had been in an archive since 1938. Napoleon Hill wrote it,
Ooh,
and the publishers would not publish it because it was so toxic at the time. So in 2011, a lady by the name of Sharon Lecter, she's a very famous author and she's a super lady. She literally got that book, and the audio version of it on Audible has two people, one person playing the devil, one person playing Napoleon Hill, and he's interviewing the
love it.
devil about politics, about healthcare, about schools, about family life. And it fits today's
You
niche
didn't do that in
so
the
well.
1930s by the well. I'm sure it was banned. 100%.
Well,
You didn't
it
do that
was
in the 1930s.
he wrote the book in 1938, but they refused
Yeah.
to release it, and they found it in an attic
I'm not
with
surprised.
his manuscripts, right? And she knew the family well. And anyway, it's like a 13 or 14-hour listen. It is amazing. My point is though, is that audiobooks to me connect. And I've listened to that book. I'd be driving and all of a sudden, oh, I really like that. And it took me longer to listen to it, some audiobooks, because I'll rewind. I want to listen to that
Yeah.
chapter again.
Yeah.
And then there's books like one of my favorite books is still The Five Love Languages. I've listened to
Yeah.
it, I've read it twice, listened to it 3 times. Love that book. And I still get stuff out of it. And people say, well, that's just about relationships with your significant other. No, it isn't. It's about relationships with everybody.
Love is love.
Am I, yeah, am I stoking the fire or am I burning the house down? Right? Am I
Eh,
quenching the fire? Am I calming it or am I throwing gas? You know what I mean? Like, but anyway, check that book out. Those listening have heard me talk about it many times. It's probably my favorite book that I've listened to in the last 4 or 5 years, right? And if you really
Yeah.
want to listen to a great book that has some humor to it, some music, and he narrates himself, Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights is really good.
That's a good book. And I love Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, but listening to the audio portion of it because he narrates it and he has African music he
Oh,
plays.
just
Oh,
listening to his voice, it just puts you in a tizzy because he's got that melodic voice, doesn't he? So yeah. All
yeah.
right, all right,
So
all right.
yeah. All right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I love it. So, one of the last things I want to ask you before we wrap up the show is if you had to give our listeners, Katharine, one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Two things. The first thing, if you are sitting there thinking, I can't forgive, and maybe you're thinking, I don't have anybody to forgive, I submit to you that there's probably some kind of movie playing in the back of your head that you don't even know is there. So start out by saying, I forgive myself for not being able to forgive. And I forgive the energy around that thought. Start there. And then say that every night for a week. And I'm like 95% sure memories will start to flood your brain. Allow the memories to come, allow your intuition and that little bird in your shoulder to show you the way. And the second part of my message is really geared toward the women listening and watching. You are worthy. You are worthy enough to live a life of joy. You're worthy enough to live a life of happiness. And we believe you. So many women out there, nobody believes them. They don't believe what they say. They don't believe that they know their bodies. They don't believe that they know what's wrong with them. They don't believe them when they tell them something. Well, we believe you, and you are worthy enough. And this process will get you where you really think you need to be.
Well, that's an excellent last closing message. I'm going to highly encourage my daughters to listen to this because in a world dominated still today by males, women are
Yeah,
discounted every
we are.
single millisecond, not even second of the day.
Yep.
And I was labeled a feminist by one of my daughters a long time ago because I'm constantly standing on a soapbox preaching about equality and listening. And not
Yeah.
defining a woman by their gender or a male by their gender. I've been a person that says they shouldn't even have that on forms. What
I've
sex are
raised
you?
both my sons
Male?
that way, both of them.
Yeah. Like, I don't care if it's a medical situation, yes, they need to understand if you were born male or born female because there is genetic differences. But when it
Sure.
comes to an application for the silliest things and they say gender, male, female, I just ignore it. Like, what does that matter? Are you
My
gonna
older son,
preconceived notion of who I am?
my older son is a federal law enforcement officer, and people will ask him questions like that. They a boy or a girl or whatever the question is, and he'll just look you in the eye and say, "It doesn't matter.
They
It
can
doesn't
both be
matter.
evil, and they can both
It
be
doesn't
great.
matter." He won't answer the question.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. He won't answer it because it has nothing to do with what's going on. It doesn't matter.
exactly. Yeah, so I appreciate that. So our time's almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. What is the best way people can reach you?
You can go to my website, katharinegiovanni.com, and thanks to my mother, my first name is spelled a little odd, and it's Katharine Giovanni.com. And the audiobook, the paperback, and the ebook is available on Amazon, but all roads lead to Rome. So you can go to my website and click on books, and they're all right there.
Sweet. I'll make sure that it's in the show notes. Those that are new to the Give a Heck podcast, go to giveaheck.com, go up to podcast. You'll see a picture of Katharine and show notes, which will show all her links to any social media that she has, as well as the link to her website. I highly encourage you to check out the book. I know I'm going to because I'm always trying to elevate my game. And even if you haven't started elevating your game, Katharine said it in her final thoughts. Forgive yourself for not being able to forgive and go from there.
Hmm?
So, any last messages you'd like to give before I say my closing statement?
No, just that they got this. Just trust yourself. It's your birthright to live a life of joy. We're not meant to live in a refrigerator box on the street. We're just not. So you got this.
Yeah, you're so correct. Those that are listening to the show, do Katharine and yourself a favor. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with those that you love and even those that you don't love. Maybe that's the first time you reach out to them and you send them a link to this podcast so that they too can give themselves an opportunity to live a purposeful life. Like my book is titled How to Live Life on Purpose and Not by Accident, right? You too have the seeds of greatness in you and you deserve to water it. Well, maybe there's a few people out there that you want to water their seeds. Maybe, who knows? Maybe you both reconnect because of it. Maybe it's because that forgiveness has never been ingrained in you, and now it can be. I look forward to listening to the book. Those of you that like reading, have at her, right? Do whatever works for you, but just don't quit. Take that first baby step to change your life. So again, thanks, Katharine, for being on. I really appreciate your time. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Katharine. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.